Well, you know what the president formed a couple of years ago, known as the Space Force, is just an acknowledgement of operations that have already existed for decades that have to do with reconnaissance in space. And so the narrative that's being launched, which is a false narrative, is that we're not alone and that those civilizations are a threat.
As you're fully aware of, we're working on a documentary in regards to the technology behind the Space Force, and Stephen Greer has given us unprecedented access over this week in Los Angeles to work on the project. But what we have for you today is an impromptu behind the scenes of our documentary while we're shooting it in Los Angeles. Apolla Asteria joined us and was able to obtain some insight from Dr. Greer behind the scenes of our latest documentary that we're working on. We wanted to give it up for our fans around the world. Just a casual conversation on what Dr. Greer's like behind the scenes. This is unlike you've seen Dr. Greer uncut, raw. We're sharing it to you, to the world right now. Take it away, Apolla Asteria in Los Angeles.
Hi, and thank you for being here with us today on Third Phase Moon. We have a special guest here today, Dr. Steven Greer. Now, Dr. Greer, I have been going to conferences, seeing you for years. I've even been to your premiere, Unacknowledged, and it's been incredible watching your career, and especially the what you did with the government in regards to bringing on full disclosure. So I am very honored to be here with you today.
Pleasure.
And I have a few questions to go over with you. So yeah, thank you for being here with us.
You're welcome.
Okay, so there has been a lot of talk in the media in regards to an alien threat. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously this is part and parcel of the lunatic fringe of the UFO subculture, isn't it? And so one of the big problems is the intelligence community has been running this scam on the public since the 50s, where they've been trying to present the UFO presence as an alien threat, first through subculture groups like UFO people, and now more recently in the mainstream media. If you look at the New York Times, CNN, as soon as Unacknowledged hit several 100 million viewers. And by the way, I really want people to understand that you can see it for free on Prime. It's going on Prime August 24th. And so Unacknowledged is an expose of that whole agenda. And they sort of increase their counterintelligence operations through the TTSA. A rocker named Tom DeLong that I had mentored when he was very young, who got taken in and deceived by the intelligence community and a General McCaskill at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So what you see happening with this subject in the mainstream media, the alternative media, but in particular in the UFO subculture, is a full penetration of the counterintelligence narrative dealing with aliens. And what they're really trying to do is prepare psychologically the populace for conflict, just like 9/11, but on a cosmic level. And it's all a hoax, just like there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that Saddam had, and yet we stumbled into that. So everyone has pretty much been drinking the Kool-Aid on this. And now they're feeding the Kool-Aid to Senator Marco Rubio, who's the Senate Intelligence Committee chairman, to the administration, to the mainstream media, which of course is on the speed dial payroll of the CIA, as you know. You looked at Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which has recently come out. We have an extensive interview with a constitutional attorney who's worked with me since the 90s, Daniel Sheehan, where he talks about seeing a document about how the mainstream media, national security editors in particular, are on the payroll of the CIA, and they have dual purposes. They're media and they're CIA operatives. And this is a well-known fact. So when you see all this coming out in the media, what you have to look at is that, all right, they're releasing some footage of us chasing a aircraft off the coast of California here. where I just got out of the water surfing. I still probably have sand in my hair.
And he actually came walking up with his shirt off. You know?
I know. I thought we were going to do it like that. This is going to be very casual, very cool, very hip, very California. It became this whole thing. Anyway, so I decided, you know, that this is why we have to really increase our initiative for creating ambassadors to the universe, which is the original project I founded, which led to the Disclosure Project movement worldwide, was Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And if you look at that documentary, you'll see the progression from the early 90s to now. And as soon as that documentary was going to come out in April, the country was shut down with COVID. You know, 4 months after the National Press Club event in 2001 for the Disclosure Project, 9/11 happened. And within about 6 months of Unacknowledged coming out, they launched this counterintelligence initiative, doing a slow rolling disclosure through the mainstream media. But if you look at every article, it has this narrative attached to it being a national security threat. That's what everyone needs to hear. That's what the purpose of that is. They're not releasing everything they have. In fact, the people doing the release aren't read into or briefed on that. They're not in the underground facilities where we are reverse engineering extraterrestrial vehicles. So those people have a very specific role to play. And people like Luis Elizondo and Van and others who are behind this, those folks are really releasing just what they're told to release and say what they're told to release.
Do you think this false flag could be coming soon?
It's happening now, is what I'm trying to say. We are in the middle of the early roll of the false flag. But actually, it's not the early roll. The preparation has been done from the late 50s to now with the intelligence community staging, and wait for it, alien abductions, mutilations, all the counterintelligence narrative of the good aliens and the bad aliens. And of course, you always notice the good aliens look like you, or you're from they look like someone from Norway. And the women always have this sort of blonde look. And the bad aliens are always a different color and look different. So what they're really playing on, I want to be very blunt about this. We're in an era of Black Lives Matter. They're playing on the tribalism, the racism endemic in human society that's been the bane of our existence for, you know, thousands of years. And they're doing it very well, but they mainly have done it through ufology and hoaxing events. So that was the psychological preparation over the last 40, 50, 60 years. Now they're doing an official slow release, but they're still attaching it to this alien threat narrative. So I expect, we predicted this in the 90s, by the way, everything that's going on. If you look at my record going, and we had Wernher von Braun's spokeswoman for the last 4 or 5 years of his life. Wernher von Braun invented the rocket for Adolf Hitler. Right. And Carol Rosin said then on his deathbed, he said, look, they're going to hoax an alien threat. Now, I later learned from people in the intelligence community that the assets are fully deployed and have been since the 60s and 70s. They can hit a button and there'd be things that would look like that Tic Tac that our jets were chasing off to California that would show up everywhere, and everyone think it's an alien craft. No, it's being made by the Lockheed Skunk Works. Yeah. And and they could do something very frightening to the public. So I think the you know what Eisenhower said, we need an awake, informed citizenry. This is the President of the United States, 5-star general, World War II hero. And he said that because he had been betrayed by this cabal called the Majority Intelligence Committee back in the 50s. And so, you know, I've worked with people who had been in his administration, who have since passed away, who said that the president completely lost control over this entire matter. But he knew that the military-industrial complex had this agenda. Now we're seeing a ramping up of that. So I think people need to be informed and awake. And it's like the Who song, we won't be fooled again. My concern is we were fooled by Vietnam. We were fooled in the Iraq War. We were fooled by 9/11. We've been fooled. And so what's happening is that we have to wake up so we don't get manipulated onto a conflict-oriented footing. Unfortunately, most of what people call ufology and UFO programming is really an echo chamber repeating the disinformation that agents have seeded and put out into the subculture. So I think we have to be very skeptical about a lot of this stuff, frankly. We have to be very scientific. We have to do really good analysis. And if we do that, maybe we can avert the worst of this agenda.
How would you suggest we as citizens handle the situation if it did happen, if the Tic Tac UFOs were to start coming down? How do you say that we would?
You have to know, you have to know the difference between a fake one and an extraterrestrial vehicle. Now, I don't use the word alien because it's just xenophobic. It's like using a racial slur.
Yeah.
Nobody should use the word alien because it means foreign. Whereas our philosophy is these are intelligent life forms that are conscious, that the singularity of consciousness is the foundation for our relationship, but it's also the foundation for the contact we're making. So if you look at Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, that documentary, which is up on Amazon and iTunes and all these places, that goes through the entire concept of making contact with these civilizations peacefully. So what the public needs to do is the public needs to quit being passive consumers of mostly disinformation and misinformation. And they need to go out under the sky with a few people and make contact. And if they do that, then they'll know what the truth is. But they have to have enough knowledge to discern between a man-made object, which is very invasive, very 3D, versus an extraterrestrial vehicle, which is trans-dimensional, comes in and out of space-time. They are completely peaceful and have never harmed anyone, contrary to the mythology that's out there that was created by the intelligence community. So you have to it's like that In Vogue song, "It Free Your Mind." I love that song. You have to free your mind of whatever you think you know about this subject. Most of it, probably 90% of it, has been deliberately sent out there to create people to be afraid, to divide people, and to create a new enemy in space.
Do you think these disinformation agents have been put into the UFO?
Oh yeah, of course they have. Yeah, I mean, these sort of counterintelligence people are everywhere, and you would never know who they are. I know who they are. I don't talk about people, I talk about ideas.
Yeah.
Let me quote Eleanor Roosevelt, or paraphrase her. Small minds talk about people. Mediocre minds talk about events. Great minds discuss ideas.
That's a good thing to keep in mind.
Eleanor was so cool.
So what do you think about the Pentagon creating a new task force? And have you been approached to participate?
As you know, I mean, I have a home in Washington, and I stay very involved in providing an alternative perspective to this from the party line of the intelligence community. I know a number of people in the Pentagon and the CIA. I certainly have not been asked to be part of this task force, which will be a fake. Let me tell you what it's going to be. It's going to be window dressing to say, we're looking into this, like Project Blue Book was in the 60s, 50s, 60s. We don't know what they are. You see, this is what TTSA is. We don't know what they are. We don't know how they operate. This is all nonsense. We know exactly what they are. We know exactly what the physics are behind their energy and propulsion systems. But they're going to do something that is really a diversion that makes it look like they're doing something. But then they will attach to whatever they release this narrative of a national security threat. Oh, it's a threat. So that's what you're going to see from that task force. I already know what they're going to be doing. So because I know people who are inside the system that I've been dealing with for, almost 30 years. I mean, remember, I briefed the director of the CIA personally, like this, in '93. So that's 27 years ago, as a young medical doctor who got pulled into this. So I think, and the reason I was pulled into it is the intelligence community had found out that we had discovered a set of protocols for directly making contact with these civilizations. And we successfully did so. And it was reported in the media. So that's how the whole disclosure project happened, because of the CE5 initiative, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind.
That actually leads me to my next question. Do you believe the government uses CE5 techniques to make contacts? So are they using your technique now?
There are friendly people in government circles here and abroad that I have taught these to, who are not. They're the white hats, let's call them. For example, years ago there was a president of France named Sarkozy, and President Sarkozy, his senior people at the Ministry of Defense for France and intelligence community wanted to make peaceful contact. So I did a project in France on an old 2,200 acre estate that had security put around it. And an admiral named Admiral Moran came, and we did this, and they tracked objects that came right into the field transdimensionally. We made direct contact. There are objects tracked going overhead at over 200,000 kilometers an hour. And so we were teaching them not only the techniques, but the ethical, philosophical foundation for doing so. And they were all about that. But it eventually got sort of pushed aside. This was back in, I'm thinking 2010, I've been back in the 2000s. And the document, by the way, that I have from the Ministry of Defense, which is all in French, of course, is the most important UFO document in history. It was addressed to me from the Ministry of Defense, talking about making a long-term commitment to make peaceful contact with these civilizations.
That's incredible.
So that's something that, unfortunately, when we do these documentaries, they're very short. They're 2 hours, and you're covering a lot of material, and a lot of information falls on the cutting room floor. But that's a really important event that happened. And so there are friendly people around the world, but the center of power, unfortunately, are with illegally run, covert programs that are ruthless. And their job is to create a narrative through both the alternative media, the UFO subculture, and the mainstream media, that no matter what the data is that comes out, they attach it to this narrative of a threat. So we have to wake up to that and do something that's 180 degrees opposite. I just heard a gleam in my ear. So.
Okay. Do you want to say that last sentence over maybe?
Well, no, not so much that, but you just said it that. I think it's very important that we have to take responsibility. The people, not the governments. You forget about the governments. The governments are so complex and so dysfunctional. I deal with government people all the time. And there are many good people in it, but the system is geared towards the center of power, which is corrupt. So what do you do about that? You create a citizens diplomacy effort, which is what a Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind is. Everyone, you have to see Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind to learn what this is. But there's an app we just released, and the app is called CE5 Contact. So if you put into the iTunes or the Apple Store or Google Play, it'll come up. And it's an entire training program for meditation, remote viewing, contact. And it also has, how some dating apps you can sort of see who's around to meet up with? Yeah. It has a messaging thing like that, where you can see who's in your area, and then you can meet up with those people to go out and make contact and form a team.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
It's awesome.
Okay,
so,
I'm definitely doing that right away.
Yeah, so I want people to understand, we have created this tool so that everyone in the world can make contact.
And is this already out on the market?
Yep, it's available now. You download it right now. Everyone should just go to their store and just pull it up. And it's called CE5 Contact. Yeah. So, and it's been out a couple of months, and I don't know, there are around 50,000 people using it. And what we're trying to do is create what we call in quantum physics a 1% phase transition effect. So here's the solution, and this is what's beautiful. Everyone thinks it's not like an election where you need 51% of the vote, all right? When you're dealing with consciousness and quantum systems, 1% of people, for example, meditating together coherently. They've done studies and proven that crime rates go down in the city once you hit 1%. Emergency room, I'm an emergency doctor, visits go down. Coherence rises. And that's just with 1% of the population meditating regularly in a population. They've done studies about this, and what they've likened it to is in physics, where when you're going through what's in quantum physics called a phase transition, where, and we cover this in the documentary Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, but basically when you hit 1% of molecules that become coherently aligned, the next instant 100% of them are aligned coherently, in coherence. So that's the power of consciousness. So I tell people, if the 1%, say in the United States, 3 million people, began to do the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind and make contact with these civilizations, it would change the entire system spontaneously. And that's the power of meditation, consciousness, and understanding that we're all interconnected. The physicists call it entangled or entanglement in physics, where every point in space and time is connected to every other. But the field of consciousness is what is ultimately connecting that. And so that's why we released this film this year. I pushed it out quickly because I knew from my sources in the intelligence community that they were going to ramp up this fake disclosure. They were going to ramp up this threat of aliens and national security threat. So the anecdote to that poison, or in the age of COVID, the vaccine, the inoculation for that sickness is for people to wake up to these facts, know them, but then come together. And with the CE5 Contact app, all you have to do is get on it and see who's in your area. And people in every country have it now. So you can connect with people, and even if you can't get together personally, you can get together in a meditative state. Because there's no separation. I mean, right now we think, well, we're 3 feet apart. But in reality, in consciousness, there's no distance in space or time. And that's the true nature of awareness and consciousness. So once we understand that and begin to practice those concepts, the ETs are going to respond.
I was just going to ask, do you think if we all started doing that, that would give the extraterrestrials more of a reason to come, visit us more?
Yes, that's what they're waiting for. So these extraterrestrial civilizations literally are waiting for humans to do something nonviolent and peaceful. In the meanwhile, they're just monitoring what's happening on this planet. They're certainly surveilling our nuclear weapons facilities, our space programs, things of this sort, as they should. Because what people may not like hearing is that, and contrary to all the mythology out there, the Earth is under a quarantine by interstellar civilizations, not to go too far into space, because we are not a civilized planet yet. We still have wars, we still kill each other, we still have poverty, we have secrecy keeping these technologies away from the public so that we're destroying the biosphere. Gaia, we're strangling and killing Gaia, even though we, the taxpayers, have paid for the research and development to have these amazing technologies out. So the only way we're going to fix this is for people to come together en masse. And instead of just sort of yelling and screaming in the street, do something productive. Actually make contact directly. And so that's the whole purpose of Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, is so that people understand what we're doing, but then the app actually goes through a whole training program. It's an entire extensive training program on an app. And we're hoping enough people will try to begin practicing that, because then these ETs are going to say, there's a critical mass, a critical number of people on this planet, Earth, being awake and attempting to contact us peacefully. And that's the only way they're going to do it. They're not interested, for all the bing bang, Star Wars and Star Trek and all the ufology about, secret programs way out, intergalactic wars going on. It's just not how they operate.
Do you think the extraterrestrials would intervene if our government did stage an alien invasion?
I think extraterrestrial civilizations are waiting for us to fix the problem, humans. So it's a little corny, but a little bit like the Prime Directive. There's not a lot of direct interference they're going to engage in until we invite them to be openly. But it's a cooperative thing. And the reason for that is very clear. An emerging civilization like ours, which has gone from horse and buggies to going into space and landing on the moon with this lunar module that my uncle worked on, designed, the lunar module. That was in my grandmother's lifespan, from horse and buggies and whatnot in the late 1800s to going on the moon. So they're waiting for us to then get to this next level where we're a peaceful civilization going into space peacefully, but also willing to make contact with other civilizations, not viewing them as alien, but viewing them as fellow citizens of the cosmos. This is why I hate the term alien. It means foreign, and it has a negative, pejorative connotation. Never use it. Take it off everything. Sorry.
I'll make sure I do that, by the way.
Mm-hmm. That's why. I mean, and by the way, you know, the intelligence community invents the lexicon, the words that they want people to use. They created the abduction phenomenon. They created mutilations. It used to be called ETs and people, star people, and what. Then they put in alien, and then all the negative imagery and all the horror flicks and Independence Day and the movie Alien that, you know, Ridley Scott did, who's actually very fond of what we're doing. But I think that what we have to realize is that is psychological manipulation. And we have to be wiser than being manipulated. Again, it's like the Who said, we won't be fooled again. My concern is that we keep getting fooled because the dominant media, whether it be the alternative media or the mainstream media, is really being highly influenced by these corrupt interests. So I think it's
interesting with that is people are starting to wake up more and more to that now. I
Yes.
think the whole, what's going on right now in regards to the pandemic, it's actually gone the reverse effect of waking people up more than
Perhaps. I mean, it's a wait and see. My view on that is most of what's been going on since that pandemic started has been anti-scientific, frankly, and yet the vast masses of the people going along with it lockstep, like they did with global terrorism after 9/11. My real concern is that part of how the pandemic is being used is to see how compliant and malleable and manipulated, I should say, the general population can be. So as I look at that, I think it's a beta test for what's coming.
I agree, that's my thought.
Okay,
exactly.
It's like a beta testing of a technology. They're beta testing the system to see to what extent they can control local, state, federal, international, and the governments, but also the masses to respond through fear in a certain way, whether or not it's based in facts, science, evidence, or even rational. So the big issue for me on this is we have to really begin to question everything. This is the scientific part of me that's very Spockian and very disciplined about questioning what's being put out there and then looking at, is it true or not? What are the facts? What's the base science behind it? What's the evidence behind it? But the general public isn't trained to do that. It's critical thinking, which is completely gone out the window in our educational system. You just kind of teach to the test, memorize something, regurgitate it, and move on. So this is one of the problems is we have to begin to have a certain number of people who begin to be very questioning of the status quo and definitely question anything being put out through the media on the UFO ET subject. They may put out some evidence that's real, but then they'll attach to it all kinds of false stories, like it's a threat, or The other thing you're going to see, and this is members of the Congress have been saying this, but we don't know what they are, and they may be Chinese, or they might be, I'm going, dude, I have a letter from the director of the Lockheed Skunk Works, the top secret engineering aerospace outfit, top rung in the world, from the director, Ben Rich, from 1986, where in his own writing he states there are two things people are seeing: ours, meaning man-made UFOs, they're anti-grav, and extraterrestrial, ET, he puts ET. So this is the head of the Lockheed Skunk Works. You don't have to take my word for it. This we have, the document, and we put it out there.
The New York Times just recently tried to retract their story. And
yes.
it was like one day they go, oh, yeah, we actually have craft that have appeared, and then the next day they retract it. Oh, actually, it was the Chinese or the Russians, most likely. So.
Well, but see, that's what they want to do. They want to confuse the public. They want the public to be, it's obfuscating is the word. It's sort of it's putting this out and then confuse them, and is it real or is it not? And, people need to know what the truth is. And this is why we did Unacknowledged, which I'm really happy to say, will be on Prime, and then a whole bunch of other sites beginning August 24th and moving on. We hope that Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind at some point will also go onto a lot of these sites. It's too early yet, but because it just came out in April, only 4 months ago or so. But I think if we look at what the public needs clarity and the truth, but you're not going to get that from government, and you certainly aren't going to get it from the media, because the media are going to tell the public what they are told to tell the public by the worst elements of the intelligence community. In other words, it's like the fox guarding the hen house. So anyone who thinks they're going to get the truth from the mainstream media or from most government people are sadly mistaken. You better not count on it. And this is why, I left my medical career. People don't realize, I personally gave up over $12 million in income to do what I'm doing. And over the years. And I think that I did that because I realized if we don't have enough people who are awake to this reality, we're not going to have a future for our child. I'm expecting my 10th grandchild soon.
Oh, wow.
And I know, can you believe it? How spooky having me as a grandfather.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, go surfing with the dudes. Yeah, anyway. But I'm 65 going on 16. So,
maybe we might have to go back to the beach after this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. She pulled me out of the surf, and we had some great waves going today. So you can include this. It's very casual. So that's what I think people can do. People, everyone looks at these things, and it sort of is this sort of this whole cabal of sociopaths running the planet to the ground seems so powerful, but they're not. This is why. And this is, something that, I generally wouldn't talk about in a mainstream media interview, but I'll share with you. In 1992, the head of Army Intelligence personally offered me $2 billion if I would defect to their clique of nut jobs and not do what I'm doing. I said, no, I'm not for sale. I don't care about your money. And I don't. But $2 billion was a lot of money in 92. It's still a lot, but then it was like, whoa. And that's how corrupt these interests are. They will pay off anyone and threaten anyone to get their way. And that's the other problem. You have to be a Shambhala warrior. You have to be a spirit warrior willing to be killed, lose your fortune, what they call blood and treasure. You have to be willing to go the distance. And unfortunately, when you get into power elites, I'm a nobody, I'm an emergency doctor that was rattling around in an ER, taking care of people with shot and car wrecks and stuff, I was never anyone of any position in government or society at all. I came from a very, very poor family. Put myself through high school, college, medical school. And so, those things have no currency with ordinary folks like you and me, because we're not trying to climb the ladder to the top. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why we have to be very aware of the fact that the whole future of this planet is in our hands. The people. You know what Thomas Jefferson said, we the people. We the people. And I think people give up their power too easily to these scary conspiracies. So I think you have to be aware those are going on, but don't let those people running these dark projects, black projects, control what you do, how you think. View yourself as a person, a citizen of the universe. And you have as much right, even though I was threatened by people for making CE5 happen. People said, you have no right to be doing this. I said, well, screw you. I'm going to do it anyway. You know, I'm nice until I'm not nice. So anyway, they kind of came to understand that I wasn't going to be deterred. And I think we need to have, 1% of the population, which isn't, I mean, it's 3 million people in the United States, 80 million people worldwide. But that's doable. There's more than 1% of people who believe we're not alone, who understand about yoga and consciousness and meditation, who can learn to meditate, do the remote viewing, do the close encounters of the fifth kind protocols, get the app, it'll train you, go all the way through the process. You can meet up with other people, don't have to be many, 3, 4, 5 people, plenty to go out. And form your own contact team.
It's amazing. I've actually been wanting to learn remote viewing lately because my uncle does it, and I think this is a weird synchronicity because I've actually been wanting to learn it.
Well, there's a whole meditation program and approach to remote viewing or using consciousness to see remote places. I mean, that pop culture term that the CIA actually was using was remote viewing. But, it's the way of the seer. If you go back to thousands and thousands of years, humans have always had this ability to go into quiet awareness and sense a remote place or a remote time. And also in the lucid dream state. So, a lot of what I do is early morning lucid dreaming, where I travel.
Just when you wake up in the morning? Oh,
well, barely awake, in that in-between waking, dreaming, hypnagogic sort of state. And you can intend in that state to go, and I do a lot in that state. And, part of this is, I don't know, I just innately always had that ability. Some people say it's because my grandmother was Native American, Cherokee. But I think in reality, everyone has that ability. Like the Aboriginals in Australia call it dream time. So we have to begin to understand that since we all have that ability, we're all sort of a conscious quantum hologram with the whole universe folded within us. This is what's beautiful. You are your individuality, he is, I am. But the spark of consciousness at its quiet, deep level is a singularity that's universal and omnipresent. And if you begin to experience that, you realize that the entirety of the universe and all other dimensions, conscious, astral, celestial, physical, are all actually folded within the field of consciousness. And you can access it. And it isn't hard. Everyone makes it sound like it's so esoteric. It really isn't. I like telling this story about a truck driver in Croatia who got the app, the CE5 contact app. And and he's driving along the mountains in Croatia and pulls over to a place late at night to take a rest break, and he has the CE5 contact app. So he's using it, and he's doing the protocol, and this ET craft materializes just to the left of his cab, floats over the truck, and goes to the other side and then dematerializes. And he had this amazing contact with the occupants. And he wrote to our website, SeriousDisclosure.com, with this account. I'm going, how cool is that? A regular guy. It's not like he had been in an ashram for 10 years and doing all kinds of esoteric things and was, waving crystals in the air or what. He was a truck driver, all right? So I tell every conscious human being, everyone, a homeless person on the street, literally everyone, can do this. And the more people who awaken to that and empower themselves to do it, the less power these secret government programs have. So this is the anecdote. The knowledge, the information and knowledge is important that we put out through the Disclosure Project and the military witnesses and unacknowledged. But what's the most important, the thing that got me started on this path was when I was 17, I had a near-death experience. And then 6 months later, a few months later, I began to learn meditation because I realized that there is no death, that the conscious light within us is infinite. And I began to practice meditation, and then I had this contact experience with these ETs on a mountain in North Carolina. I was 18. I just turned 18. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had this experience where I was touched on my right shoulder this firmly. Look how deep. It's like this. By this ET, and I dematerialized and went on board this craft, and we created the CE5 contact protocols together.
They taught you how to do it?
No, I was the other way around.
Oh, okay. Wow.
It was a collaborative, but it was a young human who had experienced cosmic consciousness and this near-death experience, sort of taking their understanding of consciousness and the cosmos and making something that a human can do. So it was collaborative, but it was actually more. And so that it was this 3-4 hour process. I didn't know what to do with it when I was 18, or even when I was, 30. But eventually it emerged through a series of things that happened that I needed to share this with the public.
Was this an experience that always stayed with you, or did
yes.
you block it out and come back later? So
It was always crystal clear. Yeah.
Because a lot of people say that maybe their memories get wiped and they go through hypnosis later.
Yeah, well, those may not be ETs. Those may be our program life, PLFs, program life forms, and CIA programs. You have to understand, anything you can imagine, I'm quoting, has already been done at the Lockheed Complex. Anything you can imagine in terms of technologies, weird stuff. There's a show called Stranger Things. It's fictional, but it's actually based on things that are being done at Montauk and other places. All of those things can be done by human covert programs from the 50s forward. So this is actually the next big film we want to do is about that. It's about what are the sciences and technologies that have been in existence for the past 100 years nobody knows about, that we have in our archives and have witnesses, people I deal with who've worked on them. It's time for that to come out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially if our taxpayer dollars are going into those programs.
Well, it's tax dollars, it's illicit drug money, it's all kinds of stuff. We don't have to go into that, but yeah. But it again, all that sort of stuff is a sideshow. I view it as fearsome as people view these covert programs. I view them as a paper tiger in comparison to the masses being awake. They have no power in light of that. And that's why I tell people, don't give up your power to anyone. Not to me, not to you. Stay in your, be empowered, but you be connected where we're all one. And if you operate from that, and enough people do it, like I said, you have this 1% that's needed, transition happens. A whole transition of the planet that transforms from its current state to a highly ordered, peaceful, amazing civilization. And that's what I hope to see in our lifetime. I'm sure we will.
I hope so too. 100%. Wow. That was all so amazing, but we have to backtrack with a little bit. So there has been a few reports in trash rag magazines such as Express and Sun magazine in the UK claiming that you faked the Myrtle Beach UFO sightings and claiming they were just flares. What do you have to say to those guys?
Well, I've never done anything at Myrtle Beach, so I don't know what that's referring to. We have certainly never faked anything, and we have systems up that track whatever is out there. And we have military-grade night vision scopes. So if there's a ship or something dropping flares, we'll see it. We know what they are.
Okay. I'm sorry I don't remember that question. Here
Yeah.
you go. Okay, next one. What's your opinion on Bob Lazar's claims? Let's start that way. What's your opinion on Bob Lazar's claims that one of these spacecrafts was actually found in an archaeological dig?
I cannot comment on what he may have seen. I don't know if he heard that. I know Mr. Lazar, and I've known him for many years, from way back many years ago. I will confirm, without commenting on what his source was, that I have an impeccable source that is a physicist and engineer who periodically is giving, from the intelligence community and covert programs, material that is very old, thousands to millions of years old, that are technological devices to figure out how they operate. And that I know to be a fact. I know this man, I've known him for years. He works in a SCIF, a secure communication information facility. And he's been at my home. He's an absolute brilliant person. And so I've talked to a number of people, so that doesn't surprise me. Exactly, I'd have to know what the actionable intelligence is, the term. Who told him that, where did he see it, what was it, etc. So that's why I try not to comment on other, but I can confirm, what I can confirm is that we've never been alone, that there are civilizations out there that have been around a very long time, and I'm talking millions of years, maybe longer, and that there are objects that have been retrieved under the oceans and under the ground that are extremely old. I'll also point out that on Mars and the Moon, there are very, very old structures that go back probably millions of years. So, the Earth has been here for 4.6 billion years, estimated. The life on Earth has been around for nearly a billion. So it's not surprising that this would be the case.
These are like human-like beings that created these, or would they be completely different than us?
My sources in the intelligence community and military who worked on this particular area have told me that there are two types. There are the ones that are artifacts from ancient Earth-based civilizations for which we have no record, that are very old, that are technologies. Very advanced technologies. There have been civilizations on this planet way more advanced than we are now. And those have been retrieved. And there are also ones that are of extraterrestrial origin. There's both. It's just similar to like the UFOs, what the director of the Lockheed Skunk Works said, Ben Rich. There are both ours and ET, UFOs being seen. So you take that and just, it's like Back to the Future. It was like that also, thousands, millions of years ago.
I think it's incredible to think, like, a lot of people don't realize that, wood rots after so long, metal rusts. If something happened to our civilization right now, the only thing that would remain would be whatever we had built in stone after so many hundred years.
And the things that are made out of alloys that are not rusting. Okay, even titanium. There are other materials. So when you look at an extraterrestrial vehicle, those don't have iron and steel in them. So the kinds of material science you're dealing with, we don't have time to go into, we know what those are. Those are going to endure millennia or millions of years.
I've actually seen articles before of certain things being found in magma.
Mm-hmm.
You heard about this? Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, I always thought that was interesting. It's like, how did that survive through magma?
Yeah, they're immutable.
Can you explain some of your C5 protocol techniques and how everyone could benefit from this?
I think that's what we covered.
Oh,
I got ahead of you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Do you believe our government will ever disclose and tell us the truth about extraterrestrials?
I think the government is in the process now of disclosing, but they will not tell the truth unless we hold their feet to the fire or get to our government leaders and have them informed so that they lead that process.
So you're saying a lot of our government leaders like they're just following the people on top, but they don't necessarily.
Well, they don't know. Look, a president comes every 4 to 8 years. A member of Congress has to get elected every 2. A senator has 6 years, and maybe there are a few terms. They're not in the permanent bureaucracy of these COVID programs. So that's why I keep a presence in Washington to provide information to people like that.
That's incredible.
That's all I'll say. But I mean, that's an active program. It's been active since 92 and 93. It's done as a public interest effort that people who donate and support what we're doing help make it happen. I'm every single day on the phone with people very close to our leaders in any party, in any administration, and have been for many years. And as you know, I put together a briefing document for every president since Clinton.
You brief them personally, or you brief them?
I put a briefing document together that a member of my team who's in their administration, I don't name these people, will get to them. And then I will meet with senior officials. Like when I met with the CIA director for Bill Clinton, but I've met with a number of people. We gave personally the chief of staff for President Bush one of these briefing documents, et cetera, and so on. John Podesta, who put together the Obama cabinet and worked with Obama and headed up Hillary's campaign, we provided one for him for Obama. And then when President Trump was nominated, one of his supporters and Republican National Committee delegates asked me to put a briefing together for him, which we put together and then he delivered to him in person. So that's kind of how that works. And some people I do meet with face to face, but this is something it's not kosher to talk about it. But
it's incredible that you're taking this upon yourselves to make sure it happens.
I would rather not, but someone's got to do it, and nobody seems to want to do it. And the one thing I will say, the Disclosure Project, which we sort of started in the 90s, it was called Project Starlight when it was a private briefing process for the Clinton administration and members of Congress, and then became the Public Disclosure Project when I realized the government wasn't going to do anything. I mean, they were just completely useless, frankly, these government people. And that's why we took it public, as you know, from the 2001 National Press Club event. That was seen by 800 million people around the world. But ultimately, that there's a changing of the guard every few years. So I'm dating myself, but I've been around through enough administrations to, have points of contact to provide information, but I never count on, I'm always hopeful that at some point there'll be a government official who will do the right thing. But I wouldn't bet the ranch on it. This is why I tell people we need to do disclosure. We need to gather the evidence. We need to make contact. We the people need to do this. And I say that from the school of very hard knocks that started in the early 90s with me doing this for senior officials and had great hopes that they would do something for humanity. And then they would be intimidated or waved off or threatened. And then the rest is history. So, someday, I hope the real story of disclosure will happen, because I think the only person who really knows it is my wife.
Why do you say that?
Because she's lived through this. She's the one who's helped me. But she stays out of the public eye.
Maybe we should interview your wife.
No, I wouldn't allow it.
Okay.
No one in my family is ever allowed to be. It's bad enough that I'm doing this, but and dangerous enough. So I think my view of it is that there's not enough time, but there could be a whole series on what is the actual story behind disclosure. What began to happen in 91, 92? How do we make contact? What happened when the intelligence community found out? And that's how I got pulled in, as a very young doctor. And what did I learn? I didn't know about unacknowledged special access projects. We called the documentary Unacknowledged based on this super secret compartmented strata. But I didn't know anything about that. I had someone who had been in them who took me under his wing and sort of showed me the ropes as a young doctor in his 30s. So it's a very interesting story. I mean, it's like I didn't come from any background where I should have known any of this, but I sort of just persevered, notwithstanding, the number of people on my team in the early days who were assassinated, including an attempt on my own life. But what I've learned is you just sort of have to persevere, but you have to be fiercely independent with checking the facts and the truth. I think my biggest concern is I know the big time media is corrupt, and my concern is that the general public and the alternative media are getting 1 part information, 10 parts curated disinformation, false information. And so I'm a very small voice amongst this tidal wave of smut and rubbish. So, that's what we're trying to resolve. But I'm just one person. Everyone can believe what they want, do what they want. I mean, the reason we're doing these big initiatives with Netflix or Amazon Prime, where we're trying to get information out, is that we need to move it out of just sort of people who live and breathe this subject, mainly off the internet, to the man on the street. But we also need to move it to the man on the street for making contact. Why cede that territory to government people who are going to screw it up? We need to do that. Not we as you and me, but the people. And this, I have full confidence that humans working together can cause a huge change. Because I was born in 1955. So I sort of went through the civil rights movement. I had an African American girlfriend in high school and they tried to run me over with a car to kill me for having a black girlfriend. I was very involved in the early, LGBT gay rights efforts. I was very involved in all these movements. And what I saw was that none of the big changes that people think about now happened from the center of power. The civil rights movement, the Kennedys were dragged kicking and screaming into doing the civil rights effort. It was Martin Luther King and people who were doing nonviolent, underscored, peaceful protests. So that's how change happens. And it's the same that's going to happen on this subject. But we've become sort of apathetic. We've become very good at getting angry at something and screaming. But what we haven't pivoted to and transitioned to is doing something really constructive. So here's something really constructive everyone can do, is that they can go out, form a contact team, appoint themselves to be ambassadors, citizen ambassadors from humanity and Earth to these civilizations. That's what, I started the CE5 Contact Initiative in 1990 to do. And really the whole disclosure process was something that I got diverted into only because we were successful right off the bat. And in Florida, in 1992, there were 4 ET craft that came in, but they ended up on the front page of the Pensacola paper, one of them, and it got on the radar screen of the intelligence community, both the guys who hate what we're doing and the people who thought it was awesome and love it. So both, I call them the white hats and the black hats, there are different lions, as it were, chieftains of these covert programs. But there are a number of them that are very supportive, actually. And what I found, however, was that the ability to move in that bureaucracy and make change happen, because it's so much power and there's so many competing interests, is not good. But the masses can make it happen, just like we made, just as we made the civil rights movement happen, and the gay rights movement happen, and women's rights. I remember when I have 4 daughters, they couldn't do the careers they're doing now when I was young. Now they can do anything. So this is a process. But we need to do the same thing with making contact with these civilizations.
So you're saying there should be a contact movement?
Yeah, that's what we are. That's what Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind is. It's a global contact movement that already has hundreds of thousands of people involved. But we need millions.
So tell us what you're going to be doing with that in regards to that in the future, and where could we find your social media and some final words?
Yep. Okay. Well, social media, at Dr. Steven Greer, Twitter, Doctor not spelled out, Dr. Steven Greer. And our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Dr. Greer 55. And you should put these all up. I mean, and also we have Facebook and all the social media, Instagram, and our website is SiriusDisclosure.com, SIRIUS, like the star system.
And the app is just CE5?
It's just CE5 Contact.
CE5 Contact.
So the app is CE5Contact.com, and that is the tool you need to learn to do this. And we added in, and it's great that they were able to put this in there. It's sort of a maps feature where you can go there and then see everyone in your area that wants to do this and form a team. So the way that people can really make a change and form their own team is to get the CE5 Contact app, which will train people to do the meditation, the remote viewing, set up the team, but also it has a messaging system like a dating app, so you can see who else is in your area, wherever you live, anywhere in the world, to get together and form a contact team. And that's what we call Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind, is when humans initiate the contact in a mutual way for peaceful purposes. And it's very effective. People who are doing it are having extraordinary experiences and results. And I will say, no one's ever been harmed. I've been doing this for 30 years. All our experiences have been beautiful, transformative, the opposite of what you hear about usually on the internet about this. So I think that if people get CE5 Contact, the app, you just put it in the search engine, CE5 Contact, and it'll come up. People will learn how to do this and be able to have other people in their area that do it with them. And that's really important because that creates this mass consciousness effect. Plus, most people are a little bit intimidated being out under the stars doing something like that by themselves. So if you have 3 or 4 or 5 people with you, you might feel a little more supported.
Definitely. I've been hearing about your CE5 events for years, and I've never actually been able to attend one myself.
No, you don't need to attend one. I mean, you only so you can, that's why I tell people can do this on their own. You know.
Well, I'll definitely be doing that, but I go back and attend one of yours.
That'd be great. Yeah. Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I can't believe I've been interviewing you. It's incredible.
Thank you.
I want to thank Apolla Asteria for her sit down with Dr. Steven Greer and this insightful interview. Give us a big thumbs up if you learned something new tonight. And let me tell you, our documentary that we're working on in regards to the Space Force and the technology behind it, it's going to be out very soon, maybe even before 2021. We're working on it as fast as possible, guys. The footage is coming in. We've obtained a few more interviews, and let me tell you, it's looking really good, and the information is mind-blowing. So stay tuned for that. It's going to take a little bit. We got to edit it. It takes a little time. These files are huge, but again, we're going to try and get it out before 2021. And again, the information we're going to be giving you when it is released will be up to date. So don't worry about anything. We're not going to miss a beat. Keep your eyes on the skies, everybody. We're not alone. We'll see you real soon. Blake Cousins.